Hello everybody, it's me. Here we are. Hello and welcome to my lockdown studio. I thought what I would do is actually, you might find it interesting to know how I went about designing these masks. So I've put together a little how-to from ideas, design, and then how I put them into a pattern. So hopefully you'll find this next set of video quite interesting. Anyway, have a look. So to make a mock-up of a mask to start with when I'm designing, I found this method on the internet to be most suitable for what I want. But you can have a look on the internet, on YouTube, on Pinterest to find all different methods and how to make a mask. I've taken a piece of calico. I like to work on calico when I'm first starting a mock-up because it's durable, I can draw on it, I can take it apart, and it tends to stay together rather than the fabric disintegrating. Now the method I use is actually using a plate to draw around, so a circle. This is a large dinner plate and probably the largest you'd probably need. So this one is 25.5 centimetres wide, or if you like to work in inches, it's 11.25 inches wide. You draw around your plate, like so, left of the circle, and then you're going to cut your circle out. And quickly cut all the way round. Put that to one side. Okay, so you've got a circle. Then fold the circle in half and cut along this length. Like so. So you've got a nice sort of half circle, two circles together. Now, what you need to do now is you're going to just hold them together with a couple of pins. And you're just going to stitch 1/2 centimetre in around that curve of that circle there. But you're going to leave a gap, and you're going to leave a gap up one side there, around about there, to pull through later on. So you're going to leave around about a 3 centimetre gap there, and then continue stitching. 1/2 centimetre, or that's 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way round. You'll then come out with something like that. So I've used black thread for the time being. Obviously you would use cream or white if you were making it up. But there's your stitching. So you'll stitch there. The next thing to do with the mask is you're going to then join this end of this circle or curve to that end of that curve. And you're going to just, if I show you that carefully, if you take that point to that point there, put a pin in it to make sure you hold it into place. And then I'm going to stitch across here to there, keep my needle in, and then I'm going to carry on stitching, and I'm going to stitch to this point here. And if I show you that, I'm going to stitch like that. So you can see already that's like a mask now already. Okay, find the gap or the hole that you didn't sew up here, and then you're going to pull the whole mask through. So you're going to turn it inside out, so all the inside's going to come through. Now, do leave yourself enough space to pull it all through, because otherwise it's quite a challenge to get the whole thing inside out. Pull as much through as you can, and then use a chopstick just to push out the corners of the mask. Okay. There we are. So we've got the shape of the mask starting to appear. So hopefully you can see that that's going to be the mask shape. When we go to make it up, these will be folded over at the corners here where you can put the elastic in, and obviously I would close that hole. But we don't need to do that for the method, because at the moment, for design purposes, all I'm looking at is the shape and what it looks like fitted onto the face. So the mask now I've pressed, and that's all nice. And I want it pressed because I want to look at just half of it. So I want to look at it as profile, because the mask I'm going to make, or the design that I'm going to do, is going to be the same on both sides. So I just need that pressed in half. I'm going to leave that to one side. Because I know what the mask's going to look like, and I know what it looks like on the face, I'm going to then draw out just a face shape with the mask on, and then lines, what it is, a line coming through the center of the face and across the mouth. So I'm just sort of like almost like a bullseye, so that I can see where I'm going to put the design within this space down here. I'm going to make several copies of that. So what I'm going to do actually, and I tend to use quite a lot, is I use a tracing tablet. So this is my tracing tablet, and it literally just is fantastic. It just lights up, and whatever you put on the top of it, you can see through. So you can put your original picture down, and then you can put a piece of paper over the top, and you can see the underneath it, your original template, and then you can draw your design through by using just tracing out the shape underneath. So you can go busily coming out with loads of ideas. Maybe think about the mouth here, what am I going to do with like teeth, bits and pieces. So I'm going to end up with something that looks like that. So that's one design. I do like to colour in. I had a little bit of colour and ideas of what I might be using for fabric wise and that. So once I've got that down on paper, and I might have several ideas on paper, I'm then going to take that and transfer that to, I'm going to take the tablet away for a minute, I'm going to transfer that to the calico. So then I would then perhaps use my, first of all, my pencil to think about what shape, or what the one half of that was going to look like. So I would draw it on, first of all, draw it onto the calico. Once I'm happy, then I would then use a maybe a darker marker pen to then mark out the shape of the mouth, the teeth, the smiley cheeks. Then, and I only have to do it on one side, because remember it's going to be, it's the same on both sides, so you only have to draw on one side to get the idea of what it's going to look like. I would then start to look at it and put it up towards my face and see that I have positioned everything in the right place, because if I haven't, I can make adjustments to move this up or down to make sure that where the design is sitting, that it's in the right place. It looks right when you look at it straight on in a mirror. So if I go to this one, which I did earlier, take that one away. So we can use this now as our template for making a pattern. So I'm going to just cut through this, cut through on the seam line, and I'm going to just cut out the design from the calico. That's the joy of calico, is because it's nice and durable, it's strong, and so that you can just cut all the way through it and then use that to then transfer onto some paper. Okay, so that's the design I'm looking for. These pieces can go to one side now. You could give it a press if you wanted to, if you needed to flatten that down. Bring the tracing tablet back again, this time putting that onto the tracing tablet, like so, and then present a piece of paper over the top. Hopefully you can just about make that out, and then you can then trace your pattern through the paper. Now you can do it quite rough to start with, just very loose, so you get your tracing lines. You get an idea of what you want on the pattern. And then you can take that away. You can then further go in and start to square up the pattern with, and this is what I'm using at the moment. It's called a grader square. So a grader square has got nice right angles to it, so you get really nice a nice angle there. I would measure at this point to make sure that that point and that length are the same. So we're going to measure one side and make sure we measure the other side to make sure that they're both the same. I want them to be, if I measure that again, so I want that to be exactly the same. Like that. And then to put back the curve, to make sure the curve's right, you can always use the side of the plate that you originally used for the initial twirl. Line that up there and then just draw that back round. And then you can go back in and then start to draw these lines much more defined. I've then add some seam allowance, so I want some seam allowance around that, at least around that cut edge there. So I'm going to add some seam allowance around there. So again, I'm just using my grader square just to add a 0.5 centimetre seam allowance around that edge there, which is going to be a seam. I'm going to add some seam allowance along that edge as well, because this edge here to here is actually is going to be on the fold. If we remember that that's where the fold is. So that's the initial, what I would call first draft pattern. We then need to think about, well, we've got the pattern for the mask itself, but we need the pattern for the applique. So if I get another piece of paper, and then use my tracing mat again with the light coming through, I can then trace off each individual applique pattern piece, taking into account this time the seam allowance as well. So one piece will be the red of the lips. Get that curve looking nice. That's the lips. And then the second pattern piece is the teeth. So if you think the teeth will come in on the seam allowance here, and then the shape for the teeth is here, and the detail for the teeth there. So that's your second pattern piece. And there we are. And then obviously I would then keep checking my pattern. I'd probably make up a mock-up of the idea, and then before I finally put the pattern together and then put all the instructions on, like seam allowance, cut on fold, cut two, and where the stitching lines would be. So that's really how I go about from taking an initial mock-up design of the mask, draw on the mask, but by first probably coming out with a few designs first of all. So I would have, you know, I would come out with what designs I was thinking of on paper first of all, then choose one, draw it onto the calico mask, check that I'm happy with it on my face, and then transfer that onto paper, and then that's how my pattern starts to come about. There we go. So that's how I did it. Hopefully you found that informative, useful, just interesting. If you did, please share it with other people who might also find that quite interesting and might get something from it. And don't forget that if you want to say thank you, you can go to buymeacoffee.com. If you go to www.buymeacoffee.com/Gary Mills Design, you can donate the price of a cup of coffee to say thank you. Now, it's all done through PayPal, so it's quite secure, and it's just a way of sort of supporting my channel. As I'm now stuck in my studio, I can't get out and be teaching one-to-one with people, so this is the new way forward. So let's see how it goes. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will be coming up with something soon. All right, bye.